Hey everyone, welcome in to another daily editorial here on the KE Report, another Memorial Day editorial as we are chatting with Erik Wetterling, founder and editor of the Hedgeless Horseman. We're going to be talking about three companies that Erik brought to our attention with some news flow supporting these stories. We're going to get Erik's thoughts on Alpha Exploration, Homerun Resources, and Brixton Metals. First, starting with Exploration, traded on the TSX Venture Exchange under the symbol ALEX. This company is a discovery story in the Arabian Nubian Shield area. Not an area that we talk too much about, but some of the recent drill results of the company's projects have been quite good. We can even see the stock that has aggressively moved most of this year, continuing to move higher, easily at 52-week highs. Company has a few projects within the portfolio. The main project here, Aberna, that seems to be the one that the company's focusing on. Erik, give us just a quick little overview. Alpha Exploration, what brought you into the story? What do you like about it right now?
Yeah, so I don't exactly remember how I got onto the story, but I was very impressed with the team. I think it's one of the most impressive junior mining teams or junior explorer teams out there, and especially given that they're in Eritrea. I mean, they have people that have been successful in that particular jurisdiction before, so I don't think one could ask for a better management team basically to do what they're doing. And in the beginning, I actually got into it. I think they just had made the discovery at Anagulu, the copper porphyry target, which they got some pretty solid results, like 108 meters of 1.24 grams per ton AU, and then 0.6% copper. But, okay, they had that pretty early on, so it's like discovery hole for sure. But then they drilled some more, and they couldn't really follow up on that success. But they also had, I mean, they have large, very large projects. So they began drilling, which was much cheaper at Aberna, and almost immediately they had success there with orogenic gold. And recently, I mean, in the last campaign, I mean, they've hit up to 18 meters of 15 grams per ton, 16 meters of 14 grams per ton. Then they've had more high-grade bulk stuff like 49 meters of 2.75 grams per ton, 23 meters of 6.74 grams per ton. And it's a whopper of an anomaly. I mean, they believe they have 7 kilometers of strike to work with. And from talking to the company, I mean, they've learned a lot more. So the belief is that there's one trend, which is more like structurally controlled gold mineralization. That's where they have more of the really high grade stuff. And they've hit that in clusters that are a few kilometers apart. And then there's a parallel trend where they believe it is probably more like a lower grade bulk type mineralization, because it's a different host rock. When the fluids came up, it probably shattered the host rock and then spread out. They got disseminated instead. So it's like blue sky potential here. I think is quite large. I think there's for sure million ounce gold potential. And if they have also gotten a grip of like how maybe especially at the structurally controlled areas, how the mineralization is going, where the plunge is, etc., I think the hit rate is also gonna go up from here. So I think there's a lot of blue sky there. It's already a discovery. I mean, they haven't drilled too much, and still, 21,000 meters only so far, and they produce some really good assay results. Then they have even more. They have a VMS target, which is a big anomaly. They have another big project, which has a huge gold in soil anomaly, and they've only drilled 9 holes for 1,000 meters there. So there's basically untouched. So they have a couple potential discoveries, and I think the main dish right now is Aberna, because that's like where they keep having success, and it's cheaper, obviously, than to go drilling out the porphyry.
Yeah, it seems like the gold at Aberna is getting more traction than the copper was at Anagula, even though that copper could be a big target as a porphyry target. And then the other project, the Kolanjima, it's the zinc, copper, gold. That reminds me a lot of, if it's in Eritrea, of Nevsun, when they had the zinc, gold, and copper project there that eventually got bought by Zijin. So a lot of people would hear Eritrea and turn their nose up, Erik, and think, "Ugh, I don't know. That seems like a risky jurisdiction." But if you look at some of the key stakeholders, you got people in there like Adrian Day and Crescat and Rick Rule and U.S. Global Investors. So how do you weigh the risk here with it being in Eritrea, which is definitely not a tier 1 jurisdiction, but there's a lot of key big stakeholders in there that see the vision of what this company's doing?
I mean, I think it comes down a lot to the fact that the management team have done this before. They made discoveries and sold assets in Eritrea. So that's the biggest risk mitigator, that you have people who knows how the country works, who have been there for years before. And then it's like everything else. I mean, it's impossible to exactly evaluate political risk. As far as I understand, I think Eritrea has been fairly, let's say, calm compared to a lot of other African nations, for example. And that's what I've heard, at least, and that people actually like to work here. There's not a big problem with whatever, terrorists or something like that. And then it just goes down to the fact is like, okay, what do I think? What's the value of the portfolio? What's the implied value potential? And then it's okay, maybe there's let's say there's a 30% chance or risk that something bad happens with the jurisdiction. I mean, if I still think it's cheap, then it's cheap. So, I mean, risk can obviously come in different forms. In this case, I love the geology, I love the potential. And it seems to be just because it's in Africa, there's, as far as I understand, Africa varies a lot. I mean, it's a huge continent. So I don't think it's as bad as it sounds, Eritrea. And I would think the management team thinks so as well. And so far, I don't know if anything bad has really happened. And yeah, I mean, it's, as always, it's like you can never guarantee that everything will go well with any particular store. This is just one of many I know right now, which I think is, yeah, I can see the reward side, and I think you can appreciate the risk side as well. But when you boil it down, I don't think it's overvalued given their portfolio, even if you include the political risk.
Well, this company is getting up to a $100 million market cap. And in all fairness, Erik, there has been some issues in Eritrea, but look, they're nowhere close to actually bringing a mine into production here. This is still a high leverage exploration play. All these different projects that we've already touched on are all within this Kirkasha license. Now, this is a large land package that the company has acquired here with all these different projects spread out. We only chatted about 3, and they're all different types of projects. So from a corporate standpoint, one, do you know, are there large holding costs to having this large of a land package with all these projects? And 2, what do you want to see the company do with all these projects? Because as you said, they can't move them all forward.
Holding costs, I don't know. I have absolutely no idea. I mean, I prefer the empire builders because I think, again, we're probably in the early stages of a bull. So I would like the companies that I own to have a pipeline of growth that could last for years or even decades. So they don't need to go out and buy something. And if it's something goes really well, maybe they can actually sell a project, and then you can start off on like the version 2.0 with another project. But of course, I mean, in this case, they have a couple of discoveries already. And I mean, you can drill a lot at the Berna given the 7-kilometer trend. They have also another huge project, which probably you can build a junior around, the Kosolda gold prospect. That's within the Kirkasha project. I mean, I don't know how they're going to do it. There's a lot of skin in the game. So the way I like to see it is like whatever they think is best is probably the best option. And I can see that maybe if they get even more traction, whatever, and since it's always the flagship project that kind of captures all the value in the market, I mean, I wouldn't be too surprised if they maybe spin something out or when they actually monetize it or whatever. So I have no idea really how the path forward is going to be on the corporate front, but I think it's a luxury problem to have, let's say.
Well, Erik, we'll keep tabs on it. It's definitely interesting, and they've got plenty of targets and plenty of projects to keep following up on, and there's a lot of traction in the company. Let's pivot over to Brixton, though, traded under the ticker BBB on the TSX.V and BBBXF on the OTCQB. It's similar in that they have multiple projects. They also have copper, gold, silver, and base metals. And they have, over the years, pivoted from one project to the next. Obviously, Thorn now is clearly their flagship, and BHP's come in and that's for the copper interest they have. But there also are some big gold targets on there that some investors like, and they still have all the silver that's at Hog Heaven, at Langless, and Hudson Bay. So they still have a polymetallic company with different projects. How do you value something like Brixton, and what are the key catalysts you're looking for in 2024?
Yeah, I mean, this is, again, as you say, also an empire where you know that it's only really going to be the flagship project or flagship target that's going to capture all the value. And I would say, in this case, I think it's undervalued just based on their Camp Creek target, because if I understand correctly, I mean, that's why BHP, or the main reason why BHP cashed them up twice, and they are basically funding this campaign as well. But they're going to be testing several targets. And we know that Ivanhoe Electric, I mean, they had their best hole out of Hog Heaven recently. And I expect, I mean, they're typically very aggressive, so they're drilling away there. I mean, if we play the tape forward, what could happen? I mean, the risk, let's say, to the upside is that they have one really impressive hole. I mean, we already know that they have put out some semi barn burner holes out of Camp Creek target already, and not enough that the market just shot straight up, whatever, and it's like people pricing in, oh, it's a BHP type of deposit. I mean, BHP has 150 billion market caps. They only care about stuff that's in the multi-billion-dollar potential. So it's like, by default, we know the price is huge. But okay, so in this case, if they're going to be testing several target areas and they've already begun drilling Camp Creek, I mean, what would it take for the sentiment to turn around, let's say? Because I think the stock is near like 52 weeks low. So there's not much excitement. And even when they started drilling, not much excitement. So it's like, the way I see it is that they're going to kick several cans, and they know one can already has something, and that's Camp Creek. Plus, you have that in the back pocket that Ivanhoe Electric is drilling up Hog Heaven, and we know that Robert Friedland is an elephant hunter. So if they come out with any sort of success which makes the market believe again, I think it could be a fun ride to the upside. I just think, based on the sum of its parts, it's just too cheap. Yes, sure, there's multi-asset companies out there which like, oh, we have 6 projects. But there's no threat of revaluation because they're only working one project and nobody cares about that. In this case, I think they're doing high impact exploration, and given again that they're backed by BHP. BHP wants them to focus mainly on BHP type targets. So I think this has actually a few bullets in the chambers, and I think they have that kind of aha potential. I can guarantee it's going to play out, but it's going to be interesting to see after all the assets are back from these 12 to 17,000 meters, if they get something somewhere, or at Hog Heaven, that Ivanhoe gets something somewhere that gets people to believe. I think 53 million is going to look low.
Erik, what do you think it will get people to believe here? Because it's one of actually the arguments against Brixton is that they do have so many irons in the fire, and some investors say that they're almost too distracted. They haven't found that, in a way, flagship asset. And even the Camp Creek drilling, the hole that they're following up on, the kind of promotion around is that the bottom 48 meters of a hole from, I believe it was last year, that they are drilling from the same pad. It bottomed in a 0.25% copper, 0.09 grams per ton gold, 3 grams per ton silver. We're not seeing high grade here. It is over 84 meters, but that's at the bottom of the hole. There's probably a reason why the market didn't get overly excited about that result. There's not a whole lot of high grade there. And even that best hole ever at Hog Heaven also didn't carry that really high grade. It was just over 0.5% copper. Why, or do you want the company to focus on one of these projects? And B, it needs better drill results, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I guess one could say that. I mean, I think Camp Creek, for example, you kind of maybe need that almost philo type hole or something, or you find somewhere else where it's maybe higher grade, but not over 800 meters or whatever. And as always, it's like impossible to say what's required because it depends on the market. I mean, if copper crashes, you're going to need a lot better drill result to actually get people excited. I would say it's impossible to say, but I guess they're doing it in a correct way. Since it's such a huge land package, and you don't really know where the best stuff is, and if they have one of few good holes at Camp Creek, because that's not closed off in any way, shape, or form as far as I'm concerned. That could be enough. If they make another discovery, maybe that could be enough. But it's got to, given the share structure as well, there's going to be something with some oomph, let's say. I mean, I remember when Hercules Silver drilled their copper hit, and a lot of people were doubting. It's like, no, too many shares out, it's not going to go anywhere. And it just started to rip. And I think it traded as many shares in 1 week as the rest of the TSX.V or something. And if you look at that drill hole, was it that spectacular? No, but it was like what it represented. It got people to believe. It got Erik to believe. So obviously BHP already believes here, but what's going to make the retail sector mainly believe, I can't say. But if they put out, I don't know, 800 meters or 0.7 or maybe 0.8. I don't know what's required, but something that simply switches the mentality from, oh, nothing happens. When stuff starts to happen, everybody else will believe. I mean, that's, I guess, what happened with Hercules, for example. There's nothing changes sentiment as a pricing change. So whatever is needed to get some momentum, then I think the narrative is going to change in the forums, and it's going to get, people are going to be talking about the potential, not how expensive it is to drill here, not how deep the mineralization is. That's because that's how markets work.
Erik, it is interesting. I mean, I've been following Brixton a long time personally, and one thing I can say is that they have a huge property with Thorn, and they have been all over the place with it. But if you think back a couple of years back, Outlaw was the big target. That's where they were trying to build resources. And then they switched gears to Hog Heaven and Langus for a while back in 2016. But then they shifted back to Thorn and said, okay, now we're looking at Metla. And then Trapper became the gold target they were going after. And now they're going after Camp Creek for copper. Is it possible it's just such a huge project? Maybe it's too big for a junior to drill, or maybe there's so many targets that every time they start getting traction, a certain group of investors comes in for a certain metal, and then they switch focus again, and then those investors leave, and a new group comes in. Maybe is it something where they're just having a hard time building loyalty and traction because they switch their plan up every year to a totally different plan?
I mean, I think you're right on the money, basically. That I think that there's one thing that occupies every investor's mind, and it can be a project, a metal, specific drill campaign or whatever, or that they're going to focus here or there. So when that keeps switching, I think you trade shareholders. And maybe, I mean, I bought in a long time ago for Langus, for example. I was really excited about the silver property. Now that's obviously not the focus. Okay, as a silver bug, are you going to be in Brixton then? I don't think so. As a copper bug, maybe you're aware of Brixton right now, for example. So yes, I think that's, and of course, that's why I don't envy management teams, because it's like, how do you know what the right decision is? It's almost impossible to say, and it depends on the sector sentiment, it depends on the metal sentiment. And I mean, I could see the argument for focusing on Camp Creek only, but at the same time, if you want to, let's say, keep BHP interested, show that there's more than Camp Creek, and you keep them as a backer, but it's okay when you think about it. Should a junior be tackling this? I mean, it's a small country, basically, they're drilling, and it's expensive drilling. I mean, there's a merit to say that, hey, if they make a absolute, no questions asked, this is a burner intercept, and you have 100% ownership still, people are going to be happy. If it's more about process, that this is going to take time and there's going to be races, then you would think, hey, I wish we maybe JV this out to BHP themselves, and they can spend 100 million drilling here and we'll keep 30%. So again, in hindsight, everything is going to be clear, but I can see the merit for both. It's, I guess, more high risk to do it yourself, but if you want a maximum upside, I guess you're hoping for that barn burner hit to get things going.
Oh, absolutely. And it is higher risk for them because these holes are expensive. They're deep holes that they are drilling. But Erik, look, this isn't a new story. That's what we're getting at here, is that they've switched focus a few times. Yes, they have a large land package, and you can argue many different discoveries. How does this fit into your portfolio when you balance the fact that, A, high share structure, you already covered that, B, the stock really hasn't rebounded with this general market rebound that we have seen. And C, that they're spending a lot of money this year. So what type of stock is this in your portfolio, and when do you make the decision to either cut your losses in this one, or not losses, but the value proposition of could be in another stock, or buy more because the stock hasn't moved?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on your risk profile. I mean, typically, I'm not, as I've said many times, I'm not too keen on the highest risk pre-discovery plays. I mean, is this a pre-discovery play? I wouldn't really say so. I mean, they're hitting something and some good holes at Camp Creek, and also Ivanhoe Electric is hitting something up there, and because they keep drilling as well. And obviously, I don't think a lot of that is priced into the actual price. So from a betting perspective, I think this is dirt cheap. When you factor in the dilution and share structure, it becomes a more complicated matter. And I mean, I wouldn't be against, for me, it's like I'm not betting the farm on Brixton. I don't know if they're going to hit or not. But I have a position, as I have a lot of other high risk, high reward position, where it's like, hey, if they totally bomb out this entire campaign, it's not going to be a big deal to my portfolio. If they actually do get a intercept that really gets the market to care, maybe it goes up 50 to 100%. I can, who knows, maybe I triple my position or whatever, and that's just the start. Because obviously, I mean, thinking from the end, if they find something that turns into a BHP type price, it's going to be worth a lot more than 100 million. And now the question is, what are the chances of that happening? I don't know. I mean, if it's 20%, it's probably dirt cheap. So, I mean, yeah, from a pure betting perspective, I think the market is absolutely off the mark here. But at the same time, I can understand it from like a short-term momentum perspective that nothing seems to get it up, whatever. But as we saw with Hercules, I mean, anything can change at any point in time. So it's like, the way I see it, I think it's one to have on your radar at least. And if you see this market start carrying, I think it could be a wild ride. But we don't know if the market's going to carry or when.
That's so true, Erik. It all takes is one good drill hole to capture people's imagination again, and it can send these exploration stocks soaring. Hope that the team at Brixton does come up with a zinger that really starts to get people's attention on the Thorn project again. Let's also pivot over to one other company you had for us. This is a little different. We've talked about it a couple weeks back. Homerun Resources. It's traded under the ticker HMR on the TSX.V, and this is a silica sands project, so a little different than the kind of company we normally discuss. What do you see as being the key drivers here? What got you interested in Homerun Resources?
Yes, I mean, this is not something I typically do, get into the silica sand business. I mean, I barely knew it existed. I remember reading some articles a couple of years back when you read, oh, the world is running out of sand, which is incredible when you think about it. You would think sand is the least of our problems. You get all the Sahara, whatever. Of course, it's more complicated than that. That silica is, I think, one of the most commonly used commodities around the world. And in this case, you have a small Canadian junior who picked up silica sand deposits in Brazil with exceptionally high purity. And basically, you get paid more the higher the purity is of your silica sand, because you can do more stuff. Let's say you get more value the higher the purity. So they're already starting at exceptionally high purities. I've been trying to look around what are some of the highest grade deposits around the world, and Homerun stuff seems to be basically, there's maybe a couple others that are really high. So I think they have a competitive advantage to start off with. But again, I don't know much about the business or anything like that. But to me, the bet was, I was going to say, a no-brainer. Okay, you have a very exceptionally high purity to begin with. That's got to be a competitive advantage. I mean, it costs people obviously to upgrade the purity, and if you're starting at a level where other companies have to process it to get to, then you're already, I mean, from a cost perspective, you're already starting in the higher tiers in terms of sell prices, and you didn't do anything for it. But again, the idea was that, hey, if this works, it could probably be worth a lot of money. And so I was very happy to see on May 21, when they announced an LOI with C and MEX for up to 365,000 tons of solar glass per year. It's obviously in the conceptual stage, let's say. But okay, then it looks like, hey, this might be for real, that this could, I mean, this is an asset that could become a business. And when you look at the fact that if I understand it correctly, solar glass sells for $1,000 per ton from China or something. I think somebody said 50% is like transportation costs, for example. Okay, if you play around with some numbers, let's say they get that the CMX get their 5 gigawatt annual production up and running, and you play around with some numbers because the LOI is up to 365,000 tons. Maybe you take half of that. And then maybe, I mean, what the margin is, I sure don't know, but it sounds like it shouldn't be that costly of a process. Let's say, I don't know, $200-300 per ton. I don't think that's out of the question. I mean, the numbers get pretty good just based on those numbers. And then you compare to the market cap. So it's one of those, it's not a drill play, but it's like a business development play. If this pans out, and this is, I mean, they might make more deals as well, because I think they have 100 million ton resources, and just this deal is for up to 365,000 tons. So I think there's quite a few things that could go right, and if things go right, I think it's going to be worth a lot more than this in the next few years. And I think that just to have this LOI kind of says that, yeah, this is legit.
Erik, the stock really started moving at the beginning of May, and that was on the back of a MOU with Halo Cell Energy. That company produces solar cells. So this seemed to really spark a fire for the market and for the company. What do you think about that deal?
Honestly, don't have much to say. So I'm absolutely not an expert on this stuff. I think there's a lot of moving parts. I think there's going to come even more announcements because they can surely probably support it with their deposit sizes, for example. And then we're going to, I mean, how is this LOI going to play out? So from what I'm taking away from this, I'm looking at the price of it, and then I'm looking at who cares. And to me, it just simply, again, was one of those cases. I don't think I need the details. I looked at it, what was the market cap of it? Okay, if all of these people cares, all these entities care, and you look at, okay, starting off with an exceptional grade, whatever, and the plant is going to be put up in Brazil, so you're not talking shipping it from China, for example. That's going to be a lot of cost savings from a transportation standpoint. That's what I like, in my opinion, about no-brainer bets, that I don't need precision. I shouldn't need precision. If I need precision, it's not a no-brainer bet. So I don't have any idea if this LOI is going to turn into something. I think it will. If there's a 50% chance, I think Homerun is probably very cheap, and they obviously have more deals or more potential deals in the pipeline as well. So it's, again, I'm absolutely not an expert on this industry or whatever. I just look at the market cap and then look at who cares. And I'm like, okay, the worst I can be is wrong. And then the downside is 100% theoretically. But if things go well and this turns into a business with, again, starting off with exceptionally high grade silica, I think it's going to be worth a lot more than the current market cap.
Okay, hey, fair enough. The stock has pretty much doubled just this month, and it's right back very close to some 52-week highs, actually some all-time highs. We'll see where this goes. Sounds like more of a business development play here in terms of what sort of deals the company can do. We'll follow up with you, Erik, and keep us up to date whenever you see any sort of follow-up news from Homerun Resources. Erik, thank you as always for your time. We'll post a link to your website, the Hedgeless Horseman. We will also chat again next week. I hope you have a great rest of your week.
Thanks, guys. Consider me biased. I own shares of all three companies, and Homerun and Brixton are banner sponsors.